Welcome to my channel Super Rare Coins. Today is best top 3 coins. Please don't skip this video. So let's get it started. The 5-cent United States of America 1984 P coin, which refers to the 1984 P Jefferson nickel minted at the Philadelphia Mint. This is one of the important 1980s issues in the Jefferson Nickel series, carrying forward the long tradition of honoring Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and author of the Declaration of Independence. Since you requested a full long explanation in 50-minute style paragraphs, I'll break this down into a very detailed, extended historical and numismatic discussion covering design, minting history, varieties, and collector value. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo, Indian head nickel that had circulated since 1913. The design was chosen in a public competition won by Felix Schlag, who created the iconic portraits of Jefferson and his home Monticello. By 1984, the Jefferson nickel had been in continuous use for nearly half a century, making it one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. The 1984 P nickel is part of this long-running series and represents the economic and cultural climate of the United States in the mid-1980s. On the obverse front of the coin, we see a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence and the nation's third president, 1801-1809. The portrait is strong, dignified, and neoclassical, designed to emphasize Jefferson's status as a statesman and intellectual. Above Jefferson's head is the motto "In God We Trust," to the left is the word "Liberty," and to the right is the date 1984, followed by the P mint mark. Philadelphia had historically not placed mint marks on nickels until 1980, so by 1984 the P was still a relatively new feature on the denomination, helping collectors easily identify the mint of origin. The reverse, back, design features Jefferson's famous home Monticello, located in Charlottesville, Virginia. This classical-style mansion, designed largely by Jefferson himself, was a symbol of his intellect and his embrace of Enlightenment ideals. The building is depicted with its central dome, steps, and wings. Above the mansion is the Latin phrase, E pluribus unum, out of many one, while the name Monticello is inscribed below the structure. Beneath that is the denomination 5 cents, and at the bottom edge, United States of America. This reverse design had been used since 1938 with minor refinements, making it one of the most enduring reverse designs in U.S. coinage. In terms of composition, the 1984 P nickel continued the standard post-1946 metallic mix of 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a weight of 5 grams, a diameter of 21.2 millimeters, and a thickness of 1.95 millimeters. The coin has a plain edge. This alloy was chosen because of its durability and silvery appearance, and it had become the standard after World War II ended, when the temporary wartime silver alloy, 1942-1945, was abandoned. Unlike the penny, which switched from copper to zinc in 1982 due to rising metal costs, the nickel's composition has remained unchanged since 1946, making the 1984 P part of a long metallurgical tradition. The mintage of the 1984 P nickel was very large, reflecting the heavy demand for circulating coinage in the 1980s. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 746,769,000 coins, nearly 750 million pieces. This immense number makes the 1984 P nickel one of the most common dates in the series, widely available in circulation and affordable for collectors. However, as with most high mintage issues, the challenge is not in finding an example, but in finding a high-grade coin free from scratches, nicks, and wear. The historical context of the 1984 P nickel is also significant. In 1984, the United States was under President Ronald Reagan, and the nation was in the midst of economic recovery following the recessions of the early 1980s. American coinage of this period reflected stability rather than radical change. The Jefferson nickel, unchanged in design for decades, symbolized continuity and tradition. Yet the year was also a time of increasing debate about the usefulness of small denomination coins. Inflation had eroded the purchasing power of the nickel, but it remained a necessary part of commerce, vending, and change-making. From a collector's perspective, the 1984 P nickel presents both challenges and opportunities. Circulated coins are extremely common and have no added value beyond face value. However, in mint state, uncirculated condition, the coin becomes far more interesting. Examples graded MS66 and higher are relatively scarce because of the coin's soft metal and large mintage, which often resulted in weak strikes and surface abrasions. A perfectly struck, fully lustrous 1984 P nickel in MS67 or better is considered rare and can fetch significant premiums. Collectors also look for examples with clean steps on Monticello, known as full steps designations, which indicate a sharp strike and are highly prized. Another area of interest for the 1984 P nickel is in varieties and errors. While no major double die or overdate varieties are widely recognized for this year's small die cracks off center strikes and other mint errors do exist, such error coins can command values far above face value depending on rarity and visual appeal. For example, a dramatic off-center 1984 P nickel with strong details might bring collectors several $100s. The Jefferson series is popular with error coin enthusiasts, and the 1984 P is no exception. The cultural impact of the Jefferson nickel should not be underestimated. By 1984, the coin had become an everyday presence in American life, part of pocket change vending machines and children's allowances. For many, nickels were the building blocks of savings jars, piggy banks, and school lunches. Though only worth 5 cents, the Jefferson nickel carried the face of one of America's most revered presidents and the image of his Virginia estate, thus blending utility with national pride. The coin's role as a teaching tool for young collectors also cannot be ignored. Countless children in the 1980s began their numismatic journeys by filling folders with Jefferson nickels, and the 1984 P was among the most easily found issues. Economically, the 1984 P nickel represented a paradox. It cost the mint only slightly less than its face value to produce, making it just marginally practical. Yet because it was a trusted denomination and part of the American monetary tradition, its production continued in vast quantities. This practical coin thus embodies a tension that still exists today, whether small denomination coins should continue to be struck in an era when inflation has diminished their purchasing power. Next, the 5-cent United States of America 1987 D coin, which is the 1987 D Jefferson nickel minted at the Denver Mint. This coin belongs to the long-running Jefferson nickel series, which began in 1938 and is still in use today, though with updated designs. Since you requested a full long information in 50-minute style paragraphs, I'll provide a deeply detailed account of the coin, covering its history, design, composition, mintage, varieties, collector interest, and cultural context. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938 as the successor to the Buffalo nickel. The design was created by Felix Schlag, a German-born American sculptor who won a competition organized by the U.S. Mint. His design depicted Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his famous Virginia estate Monticello on the reverse. This design became one of the most enduring in American coinage history, staying virtually unchanged for over 6 decades. The 1987 D Jefferson nickel is part of this tradition, representing the continuing use of Schlag's imagery during the late 20th century. The obverse, front, of the 1987 D nickel features a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States, 1801-1809, and principal author of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson is shown in a dignified neoclassical style, symbolizing his intellectual contributions and leadership. To the left of Jefferson's portrait is the motto, "In God We Trust," while the word "Liberty" appears on the right side along with the date 1987. Next to the date, you find the mint mark D, identifying the coin as struck at the Denver Mint in Colorado. The addition of mint marks for nickels was standardized in the early 1980s, making the D an important feature for identifying this coin's origin. The reverse, back, depicts Jefferson's home, Monticello, an architectural landmark in Charlottesville, Virginia. This domed mansion, designed largely by Jefferson himself, reflects classical architecture inspired by Roman and Palladian traditions. Above the building is the inscription, E pluribus unum, out of many one, a national motto emphasizing unity. Below the building is the word Monticello, followed by the denomination 5 cents. At the bottom edge is United States of America. This reverse design had been in continuous use since 1938, and by 1987 it had become a familiar and enduring symbol of Jefferson's legacy. In terms of specifications, the 1987 D Jefferson nickel followed the standard post-1946 composition, 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a silvery appearance. The coin weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and has a thickness of 1.95 millimeters with a plain, smooth edge. This durable alloy had been chosen after World War II to replace the wartime silver alloy used from 1942-1945. The 1987 D nickel is thus part of the continuous production of copper-nickel alloy nickels that dominate U.S. coinage history. The mintage of the 1987 D Jefferson nickel was 562,052,000 coins, more than $500 million. This very high production ensured that the coin was widely available in circulation across the country. Because of this immense mintage, most circulated examples are worth only face value, though higher-grade mint state coins are valued by collectors. The Denver Mint was known for strong production in the 1980s, and the 1987 D is a prime example of the mass coinage output of that period. The historical context of the 1987 D nickel is also important. The late 1980s in America were marked by the presidency of Ronald Reagan, a booming economy, and the tail end of the Cold War. Coinage of the era reflected stability rather than innovation, with long-standing designs like the Jefferson nickel continuing unchanged. The nickel, though reduced in purchasing power by inflation, remained an essential coin for everyday commerce, vending machines, and change-making. By 1987, some economists debated whether small denomination coins like the penny and nickel should remain in circulation, but tradition and practicality kept them in production. From a collector's perspective, the 1987D nickel is not rare in circulated grades. However, in high uncirculated grades, mint state 66 or higher, it becomes more interesting. The Jefferson nickel series is known for the full steps, FS, designation, referring to the clarity of the steps on Monticello in the reverse design. Because the nickel's metal is hard to strike sharply, many coins show weak or worn step details. Thus, a 1987D nickel with full steps and a high grade is considerably scarcer and can command a premium among dedicated collectors. The coin also offers opportunities for collectors of varieties and mint errors. While no major double die or repunched mintmark varieties are widely recognized, for the 1987D, minor die cracks, die clashes, and off-center strikes exist. These errors can make a common coin significantly more valuable depending on severity and visual appeal. An off-center 1987D nickel with strong details, for instance, may bring much more than face value in the collector market. In terms of cultural importance, the 1987D nickel was a familiar part of everyday life in the United States. Millions of Americans used it for bus fares, school lunches, and vending machines. For children, nickels were often part of allowances and the beginning of coin collecting hobbies. Many young collectors in the 1980s and 1990s filled Whitman folders with Jefferson nickels, and the 1987D was one of the easily found dates, helping them complete their collections. The coin thus played a role not only in commerce but also in inspiring interest in American history and numismatics. Next, the 5-cent United States of America 1991p coin, which is the 1991p Jefferson nickel minted at the Philadelphia Mint. This coin belongs to the Jefferson nickel series, one of the most enduring coin designs in American history, first introduced in 1938 and continuing until its redesign in 2004-2006. Since you want a full long explanation in 50-minute style paragraphs, I will give you a deep detailed description of its history, design, metal composition, mintage, collectors' interest, varieties, and cultural importance. The Jefferson nickel was created in 1938 to replace the popular but difficult to strike buffalo nickel. The U.S. Mint launched a design competition which was won by Felix Schlag, a German-American sculptor. His design featured Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello Jefferson's Virginia estate on the reverse. The Jefferson nickel became one of the most familiar coins in U.S. history, remaining in circulation for decades with little change. The 1991p Jefferson nickel is a continuation of this legacy, part of the modern Jefferson nickels struck in massive quantities for everyday commerce. On the obverse front, the 1991p nickel bears a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, 1801-1809, author of the Declaration of Independence and a central figure in early American democracy. Jefferson is shown in a neoclassical style, wearing his 18th-century coat and wig. Along the left rim is the motto "In God We Trust," while the right side bears "Liberty" in script, followed by the date 1991. Just below the date is the P mint mark identifying the Philadelphia Mint. This was notable because until 1980 Philadelphia coins, other than wartime nickels, did not carry a mint mark. Beginning in 1980, the Mint standardized the use of the P mint mark, and by 1991 it was firmly part of the design. The reverse, back, features Jefferson's architectural masterpiece Monticello. This domed neoclassical mansion, which Jefferson himself designed, became a lasting symbol of his intellectual achievements. The building is shown in a straight-on perspective, though due to strike quality many coins have weak or flattened details. Above Monticello appears the motto "E pluribus unum," out of many, one. Beneath the building is the word Monticello, followed by the denomination 5 cents. Along the bottom rim is the legend United States of America. This reverse design remained in continuous use from 1938 until 2003, making the 1991 PA late 20th century example of this classic style. In terms of specifications, the 1991 P Jefferson nickel is struck in a copper-nickel alloy, 75% copper, 25% nickel, which gives it a silvery appearance. It weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain, smooth edge. This composition was chosen after 1946, replacing the wartime silver nickels, 1942-1945, that contained 35% silver. The copper-nickel alloy used in 1991 provided durability for circulation and resistance to corrosion, ensuring that billions of these coins could survive heavy daily use. The mintage of the 1991 p-nickel was 473,832,000 coins, nearly half a billion. This high mintage made it extremely common in circulation across the United States. It was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in massive numbers to meet the needs of commerce, as the nickel was still widely used in vending machines, transit fares, and everyday transactions in the early 1990s. Because of this huge mintage, circulated examples remain only worth face value today, but higher grade coins are more desirable to collectors. From a collector's perspective, the 1991 p-nickel is not a rare coin, but it holds importance for those working on complete date and mint mark collections of the Jefferson Nickel series. The Philadelphia Mint coins often suffer from weaker strikes compared to Denver Mint issues, particularly in the details of Monticello's steps. Thus, a 1991 p with sharp detail and well-defined full steps, FS, on Monticello is scarcer and carries a significant premium. The full steps designation is especially important to Jefferson nickel specialists, as strong strikes were relatively uncommon. While the 1991 p-nickel has no famous major varieties, collectors do seek out error coins. These include off-center strikes, die clashes, broad strikes, and double dies. Some 1991 p-nickels exhibit minor die cracks or die wear, which are interesting but usually do not carry high premiums. A dramatic mint error, however, can make an otherwise common 1991 p-nickel much more valuable. The historical context of the 1991 p-nickel is tied to the early 1990s in America. This was the final year of President George H.W. Bush's administration, a period defined by the end of the Cold War and the lead-up to the Gulf War. Inflation in the 1980s and early 1990s had eroded the purchasing power of small coins, yet nickels remained essential for commerce, especially in vending payphones, laundromats, and transportation systems. For millions of Americans, the 1991 p-nickel was a part of daily life, exchanged countless times without notice, yet it represents a tangible artifact of the era. Economically, the nickel has always been problematic for the mint. By the early 1990s, the cost of producing a nickel was approaching its face value, a situation that has continued into the present day. Despite this, tradition and practicality kept the coin in production. The 1991 p-nickel is a reflection of this balance between economic efficiency and national heritage. For cultural importance, the Jefferson nickel is one of the longest-running designs in American coinage. By 1991, the design had been in circulation for over 50 years, making it one of the most recognized coins in the U.S. People of all ages were familiar with Jefferson's portrait and Monticello. For many children in the 1990s, the nickel was a common part of allowances, candy purchases, and arcade games. It also played a role in sparking interest in coin collecting, as beginners often started with Jefferson nickel albums and folders. The 1991 p-nickel, though common, was part of that story. Finally, in terms of numismatic legacy, the 1991 p-nickel represents the late stage of the original Jefferson design. By the early 2000s, the U.S. Mint began redesigning the nickel to commemorate the bicentennials of the Lewis and Clark expedition and Jefferson's presidency. In 2004-2005, new reverse designs appeared, and in 2006 the obverse was replaced with a new forward-facing Jefferson portrait. Thus, coins like the 1991 p serve as a window into the classic Jefferson nickel era, which was nearing its end. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe my channel for more videos.